Jungkook, you wanted me to give you attention. Why are you running away now when I'm doing that? Vine looked at him with fluffy eyes. Vine, I don't want this. I don't see any love in your eyes for me. It feels like you're taking advantage of me by kissing me like that. I I don't know if I want you anymore, Vine said and ran away from the bedroom. Jungkook tried to stop her, but she locked herself in a different room. He knocked the door several times, but she didn't reply. She put a palm on her mouth and started crying because she still wants him. She was crying because no matter what he does, her silly heart still wants him. Jungkook stopped knocking on the door, and everything went silent. Since that day, she has been ignoring Jungkook. She only talks to Jimin and leaves the room if he comes inside. Jimin has been watching all of that, and he was very sad that both of his parents are angry with each other. He wanted to do everything he could to make them come close, but he didn't know how. She was scrolling through her phone in the bedroom that suddenly Jungkook entered inside. Watching him, she closed her phone and rolling her eyes, she got up from the bed and started walking away from him. Jungkook exhaled in anger. He held her wrist from behind and pinned her to the wall. Her breath was stuck in her throat because of the closeness between them. She closed her eyes, thinking he might do something to her again. He looked at her with narrowed eyes and didn't say anything. She kept looking until Vine finally opened her eyes and looked at him. Jungkook, why are you doing this to me? I can't take this anymore. I apologized, right? Can't you forgive me? He said. His eyes were red from suffering. Vine, what are you asking forgiveness for? Do you even know what you did? Jungkook, yes, I bit your lips while kissing you. I was harsh. I'm sorry. Vine scoffed. I knew it. You don't even realize your mistake. How are you going to make up for it? She looked in his eyes and she knew he had no idea what she was talking about. Vine, it's my fault anyway, she said and tried to move past him. He pinned her again forcefully and hit his palm on the wall beside her head hardly, making her startled. Jungkook, then tell me what's my mistake. I will do everything to make it right. His eyes was desperate as he asked her. Vine sighed and said, do you love me, Jungkook? Jungkook, I do. I love you so much. I didn't realize it earlier until you ignored me like that. I realized I can't live without you. I crave your attention. Please don't ignore me like that from now on. A tear fell from his eye. She was feeling bad for him. She wanted to hug him. She wanted to tell him that she will never ignore him. But she knew he didn't love her. Her eyes started forming tears and she smiled. Vine, you don't love me, Jungkook. You just crave me and my attention. You don't even know what love is. Jungkook looked in her teary eyes and his grip loosened on her. He couldn't believe this. No, he didn't want to believe this. He was angry, not guilty. His eyes grew dark, and as soon as she tried to move away from him, he pulled her in a kiss. He forcefully crashed his lips upon her, holding her face from both hands with such force so that she couldn't escape. Vine gasped, her breath stopped, and tears started flowing from her eyes. She tried her best to get rid of the kiss, but he kept deepening the kiss. He made it as rough as he could because he was waiting for it for so long. He was finally getting all the attention that he craved, so he couldn't stop. After a few minutes, he stopped to catch his breath. He looked at her with a dark smirk and said, "Your lips are like a drug to me. I can't stop anymore." He held her shoulders and threw her on the bed. She shouted, but he came upon her and started kissing her neck wildly. Whine. "Jungkook, please don't do this. Please leave me, Jungkook." She kept asking him, but he was too lost to hear any of this. She cried loudly as she said, "I hate you, Jungkook. I hate you so much." He stopped for a second after hearing this and looked at her. "Jungkook, what are you saying, Vine? Why do you hate me? Why can't you understand me? I love you so much." She immediately backed away from him while clutching her shirt tightly. Her breath fastened. "Vine, you are a monster, Jungkook. I hate you so much," she said and started running away towards the door, but he came in front of her. He locked the door and leaned against it. Vine cried, "Why are you doing this to me, Jungkook? Jungkook, why are you doing this to me, Vine? I told you I can't live without you. Why do you keep ignoring me?" Jungkook came closer to her and held her by her waist, but she slapped him. "Vine, I can't believe I loved someone like you," she whispered and locked herself in the washroom. She was crying inside the washroom, and he kept knocking on the door. His eyes were dark and he was still craving her. He was banging the door so hard that Vine's heart started pounding in her chest. "Jungkook, open the door or I will break it," he growled while banging on the door. "Vine, please let me go, Jungkook," she said while crying. "Jungkook, I can't, Vine. I love you so much. I can't let you go." His eyes grew darker, and her cries got louder. She was so scared of him at the moment. After an hour, Jungkook sat on the floor leaning against the washroom door. He finally came into his senses and started crying. He himself cannot believe what he did. He himself didn't know what to do with himself anymore. He was addicted. If he wanted her back, he will have to get rid of his addiction somehow. He will have to gain her trust back. Even if it causes him death, he will have to do this. Jungkook whispered through the door, "Vine, I'm sorry. I know I'm not worthy of forgiving, but I will make myself worthy. You are right that you hate me. I hate myself too for doing this to you. Vine, I will never ever trust the words of someone like you," she said through her tears from the other side of the door. He smiled. "Thank you, Vine. You gave me another motivation to get rid of this. Don't worry, I won't come near you anymore." She heard some footsteps near the door going away from the door. She slowly opened the door and peeked through, only to find out there was no one outside. She opened the door fully and wiped her tears. Vine spoke. "It's been a month since that day. I'm still living here because of Jimin. I don't know about him, what he feels, how he feels, because every time he sees me, I see his fists clenching and his neck veins popping up, but he leaves my sight immediately. He has been drinking a lot since that day, but I didn't stop him. We haven't talked even once, not even important things. If he wants something, he tells the maid. Everything has been the same except the fact that I don't need to leave the room if he enters. I don't fear him anymore. It was raining outside and Wine has been coughing uncontrollably while she was in kitchen preparing breakfast for Jungkook and Jimin who were waiting on the table. Jungkook and Jimin were giggling while talking with each other. Wine came and served the food. Suddenly his expressions changed and he asked, "Are you okay? You're coughing non-stop." She looked at him when he asked, but she noticed that he wasn't even looking at her. He was looking down. This was the first time in the whole month that he said anything to her. "Fine. I'm fine. It's just a little." Before she could complete, she staggered from her place and was about to fall down because of how dizzy she was, but Jungkook held her in time. "Wine." He immediately picked her up in his arms and took her towards the bedroom. Before that, he said to Jimin, "You do your breakfast and go to school with the driver." Jimin, "No, I won't. I will stay with Mama," he said with teary eyes, getting worried for Wine. Jungkook looked at him with reassuring eyes. "I will be with her, trust me. You go to school." Jimin, "Promise you will take care of her?" Jungkook smiled. "I promise." Jungkook was relieved a bit, and Jungkook went to the bedroom while Wine was still conscious. "Wine, I'm fine. You can put me down." Jungkook, "Talk about fine. You were literally going to fall," he said, putting her on the bed. He put a hand on her forehead and it was burning. Jungkook, "It's so high. Why didn't you tell me before?" Wine, "I was just." She stopped when she realized he wasn't even listening to her. He took out his phone and called the doctor. He looked at her after calling the doctor and said, "Don't worry, he will be here soon." Wine smiled as he looked at him. He completely changed since that day. Is he doing that for me? Does he love me that much? But what if he again? I stopped when I remembered what he did to me that day. My breath got stuck in my throat and I was having difficulty breathing. Jungkook, "Wine, what's wrong?" He immediately poured hot water for her in the glass and got close to her, but she hit his hand unintentionally, making the glass fall from his hand and break down into pieces. "Wine, get away from me." Jungkook looked at the glass and then at her. His eyes became red, but he could understand. He put the water bottle on the side table and sat on the couch far away from her. Not too far because she was sick right now, and he can't leave her alone until the doctor arrives. Jungkook, "I will leave once the doctor arrives. You can tell me if you need anything," he said while looking down. Vine's breath slowed down and she said, "Jungkook, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Jungkook, "Don't say that. It's my fault anyway." Vine looked at his eyes, which contained nothing but emptiness. She can imagine how hard it must be for him to handle everything, how much he needs a hug right now. She was looking at him when the doctor arrived inside the bedroom. Jungkook asked the doctor to look at her and he went outside. Vine looked at him leaving and her eyes got fluffy. Jungkook was waiting outside while walking back and forth. After a few minutes, the doctor came outside and said to Jungkook, she was having a high fever due to the cold weather outside. I gave her medicine. Right now, she's sleeping. I wrote the prescription here. Make sure she takes it on time. Jungkook. Thanks so much, doctor, he said and went inside after the doctor left. He came near her and put a hand on her forehead. It was still a little hot. He took a towel and some cold water from the washroom to wipe her body. He started with her forehead till her arms. He stopped for a second when he was wiping her cheek. He looked at her innocent and beautiful face. She looked so cute up close. But he smiled. He smiled because even though he was looking at her from so close, he didn't want her lips anymore. He didn't want to do anything with her. He was just relieved because she was fine. He was relieved because she was with him. He didn't want anything more than that. Why can't I stop my tears? Is this how it feels to love someone? Why am I so happy after hearing that she is fine? I don't want anything anymore, as long as she is fine, and especially if she is happy. He got up with a pot of water in his hand to throw it out, but he stopped when Vine held his hand from behind. His eyes widened, and he stopped at his place without turning back, as it was the first time Vine was holding his hand after the whole month. Vine, tell me, Jungkook, do you still want me? Jungkook looked down, holding the pot with all his force and looking at his own reflection in the water. Jungkook, would you believe me? Fine. I will decide that after your answer. Jungkook exhaled. I don't know. I just want to see you safe and happy. Nothing more, nothing less. Vine's heart skipped a beat after hearing him. Her grip on his hand loosened without realizing, and he left in front of her eyes. She looked at her very hand which was holding Jungkook's, and she smiled. She hugged her hand and kept smiling. Next day, Vine woke up after oversleeping. She realized that both Jungkook and Jimin weren't on the bed. She looked at her phone to take a glimpse of the time, and it was already 10 a.m. Her eyes widened, and she immediately got up, heading downstairs. She walked while rolling her hair back in the hair clip as she yawned. Her baby hair falling from the sides, all of that gave Jungkook a smile on his face as he watched her, wanting to tease her, watch her laugh, or have a casual talk with her, just like a husband would have. But he knew he wasn't worthy of it, and he himself was the reason for his doom. Vine's eyes fell on him, who was constantly staring at her. Vine, what are you still doing here? What about Jimin? Did he go to school? You should have woke me up. I. Jungkook, you look exactly like a wife. Like my wife, he said. His eyes were lost in hers. Vine, what? Jungkook smiled. Don't worry, I sent him to school, and I didn't wake you up because you were already sick. Vine, I'm not sick anymore. And why didn't you go to work? Jungkook, I took a day off. If you need anything, just tell me. All you gotta do today is rest. I will be here for you. I swallowed. Why did he suddenly look like a normal husband in a normal household would look like? Taking care of the wife, taking a day off when she is sick. What's gotten into him? He said his words and walked away, leaving her speechless. She was sitting in her room, bored, while scrolling through her phone, even though she didn't want to, while Jungkook sat on the couch, busy with his laptop. Suddenly, a gasp left her mouth. Jungkook looked at her. Her hair was stuck in her necklace. She tried her best to take them out, but it wasn't working. Finally, she got off bed, walking towards the mirror to take it off. As she was trying, her hands felt a tingle when his hands came upon hers. She looked at him through the mirror and he said to her, "Let me do that." She left her hands down and he slowly took the necklace out of her hair. He looked at her through the mirror and she looked back. Their eyes locked for a few minutes. Then his eyes fell on her lips. He moved close to her neck from behind. Her breath fastened, but she didn't budge. As soon as he was about to kiss her, he stopped there and was about to walk towards the couch when she held his hand from behind. He looked at her reflection in the mirror. Wine. Why do you hesitate, Jungkook? Because I'm afraid. Afraid that if I do it, I won't be able to stop. His eyes locked with her intensely. Wine turned back and slowly she moved her hand across his cheeks. She did that for a few seconds and then slowly moved towards his lips to kiss him. He was taken aback. He never expected something like this from her. Did he gain her trust back? She slowly kissed him and broke it after a few seconds. Only a few seconds, which weren't even enough for Jungkook to process and kiss her back. Wine. You don't need to be scared. It's fine. As long as you love me, my soul, my heart, and my body are all yours. Jungkook, you kissed me first this time. Before she could even complete, he said this to her, and her lips were taken by his. It was a slow and soft kiss, even when Jungkook didn't want it anymore. He was licking her lips passionately. Jungkook, I love you so much, Vine. I can do anything for you. Vine looked in his eyes and said, I can see it now. She smiled and hugged him. Vine spoke. Someone who can change so much for me, I will never let him go. Everyone talks about dying for their partners, but he lived for me. I can't ask for anything else. Why, why can't I stop my tears? Vine, I love you too, Jungkook. She broke the hug and pulled him in a deep kiss because she herself wanted it this time, only with him.